In 1973, researchers opened a sealed tomb. Within days, 4 were dead. Within weeks, 10. By the end, 15 people connected to that excavation had died. A fungus was found inside. It was never proven to be the cause. That tomb is the last of 5 real artifacts at the center of this investigation, each surrounded by documented deaths, each hiding one detail science still cannot explain. It starts in Egypt, with a different tomb and a prediction no one should have gotten right. On November 4th, 1922, archaeologist Howard Carter's team uncovered a stone staircase in the Valley of the Kings, leading to a sealed doorway. By November 26th, Carter made his first breach into the tomb of Tutankhamun. Accompanying the excavation was the expedition's wealthy financial backer, Lord Carnarvon. According to popular lore, on the exact day the tomb was breached, a cobra entered Carter's quarters and killed his pet Canary. From a biological standpoint, a cobra killing a small bird requires no supernatural explanation, yet Carter's own detailed excavation journals never recorded the event, suggesting the story was a later embellishment. Within months of the breach, Carnarvon fell severely ill. His official cause of death on April 5, 1923 was pneumonia, triggered by an infected mosquito bite he had nicked while shaving. While some researchers later proposed that ancient sealed tomb fungi could have compromised Carnarvon's lungs, no toxic biological agent was ever recovered from the site. Science points to a simple, tragic infection, but the public remained unconvinced. The narrative of a pharaoh's vengeance was already taking root. Arthur Weigel, an Egyptologist and correspondent for the Daily Mail, watched the excavation from outside the immediate team. On February 16, 1923, as the burial chamber was opened, Weigel observed Carnarvon's light-hearted attitude. Skeptical of the atmosphere, he allegedly remarked to a nearby reporter, "I give him 6 weeks to live." On April 5, 1923, just under 6 weeks after the opening, Carnarvon died. The Daily Mail had printed the quote on February 19th, meaning the prediction was public record before Carnarvon ever fell ill. Newspapers seized on this interval, presenting it as a correct fulfillment of a dark prophecy. A fulfilled prediction is not scientific proof of a curse, and the remark may have been selectively remembered or amplified by later reporting. Yet, the timing remains the one detail that defies simple dismissal. If a single death can be rationalized, what happens when an object carries a centuries-long ownership record of constant, documented tragedy? The Hope Diamond is a 45-carat blue gemstone originating from India. Its verified history begins in the mid-17th century, when French merchant Jean-Baptiste Tavernier acquired the raw stone. From there, official archives track its physical movement through the French crown jewels, British financiers, American dealers, and eventually, its 1958 donation to the Smithsonian Institution. While sales receipts and museum documents verify this chain of custody, popular curse literature adds a parallel timeline of ruin. This unofficial record attributes a sequence of bankruptcies, illnesses, and family disasters to its owners, including Evelyn Walsh McLean. Historians point to selection bias to explain this pattern. When an object achieves global fame, any misfortune associated with its keepers is systematically recorded and repeated, while decades of uneventful ownership are ignored. The paper trail confirms who bought, sold, and held the diamond, but it remains silent on whether the stone itself brought them to ruin. Under ultraviolet light, the physical behavior of the gemstone replaces legend with strict physics. Under active exposure, the stone exhibits fluorescence, emitting a bright blue light. But once the light source is switched off, a second phenomenon begins: phosphorescence. In complete darkness, the diamond continues to glow with a delayed energy release. This is a property of the crystal lattice, where boron impurities trap and slowly release energy. The process is completely harmless, emitting no radiation or toxins. Yet, while laboratory instruments measure this afterglow as a standard orange-red wavelength, human eyes repeatedly describe it differently. In the dark, the stone appears to radiate a stark, unsettling blood red. This persistence of blood imagery remains the one detail that scientific chemistry cannot fully sanitize. But while mineral physics explains the strange behaviors of light, other fields of science must confront actual blood, preserved perfectly inside a body frozen for thousands of years. In September 1991, Two German mountaineers walking near the Austrian-Italian border spotted a human torso emerging from the melting ice of the Wetstall Alps. They had stumbled upon a naturally mummified man from the Copper Age preserved for over 5,000 years. Extreme cold, dry winds, and stable glacial conditions halted the normal biological process of decay, locking his tissues in time. Decades later, scientists examining the mummy's arrow wound analyzed microscopic tissue samples. Using atomic force microscopy, they identified intact erythrocytes, the scientific term for red blood cells. These cells, along with a clotting protein called fibrin, retained their shape, prompting some researchers to remark that the blood looked as if it had been freshly spilled. These dry, preserved structures are completely distinct from living, fluid blood. No infectious agents have been shown to travel from the ancient remains to modern researchers. The extraordinary preservation serves as clear scientific evidence of environmental stability, providing no proof of a lethal curse. A sequence of 7 reported deaths kept the myth of an alpine curse alive in the public press. Over nearly 3 decades, several individuals who handled or analyzed the mummy died under wildly different circumstances. Lead archaeologist Helmut Schmid suffered a fatal heart attack in 1998. DNA analyst Peter Keller died in a car crash, while other staff members succumbed to cancer, stroke, and suicide. These fatalities lack any unified clinical cause, and no independent registry confirms the complete medical history of the cohort. Statistically, a group of dozens of researchers tracked over 30 years will accumulate deaths from natural causes and accidents. Correlation with the discovery does not equal causation by the mummy. Still, this pattern of mortality cemented the legend, transitioning from a prehistoric find to a modern consumer object whose owners claim to share a single, terrifying experience. In 2003, a small wooden wine cabinet was listed on eBay, launching a modern ghost story. The seller, Kevin Mannis, claimed it held a dybbuk, a term from Jewish folklore traditionally referring to a transient, possessing spirit rather than an entity trapped in furniture. Mannis later admitted the Holocaust survivor backstory was a creative fabrication, leaving the artifact with no verified historical provenance. Despite this, the narrative grew, eventually drawing in later owners like museum curator Jason Haxton, who reported strange physical symptoms. Scientifically, the cabinet possesses no measurable toxic, radioactive, or electromagnetic hazards. Instead, psychologists point to a combination of anxiety, expectation, and the nocebo effect. Under high stress, these factors, along with sleep paralysis, can trigger vivid, terrifying sensations of pressure and dread. Yet, while clinical psychology can explain the human body's capacity to manufacture its own terror under the influence of suggestion, the legacy of this ordinary, unverified wooden cabinet continues to grow in modern popular folklore. Multiple subsequent owners of the cabinet, isolated from one another, reported a highly specific nocturnal terror. Sleepers describe waking in darkness to the oppressive sensation of a shadow standing directly over their beds, breathing cold air onto their necks. Psychologists point to prior internet exposure, where a viral online story provides a common script for dreams and waking interpretations. Yet, even without direct communication, different owners use strikingly similar language to record their fears. Because public testimony cannot be independently verified once an object's legend is known, this shared vocabulary remains the unresolved anomaly. But while these nightmare reports rely on the frailty of human memory, the lethal threat sealed inside our final tomb was entirely physical, awaiting a team of Polish researchers who breached a royal crypt in 1973. On April 13, 1973, that physical threat became active inside Wawel Cathedral in Krakow, Poland. Researchers gathered to open the long-sealed tomb of King Casimir IV Jagiellon, a highly significant historical figure of the Polish monarchy. To gain access to the royal resting place, the academic team secured formal administrative permission from the Archbishop of Krakow, Karol Wojtyla, the man who would later become Pope John Paul II. This signature was a routine bureaucratic clearance for historical study, not an endorsement of the supernatural. Armed with official permits, a team of 12 multidisciplinary specialists, including archaeologists and medical experts, drilled a small borehole through the cold marble sarcophagus. They stepped into the damp, ancient air of the burial vault, collecting physical remains and biological samples. Inside the absolute darkness of the sarcophagus, 5 centuries of stagnant humidity had fostered a quiet biological threat. When royal tombs remain sealed for generations, the decay of organic offerings, wood, and textiles creates a perfect incubator for microscopic fungi. Samples extracted from the damp interior of King Casimir's crypt revealed a dense, living layer of mold on the decaying coffin. Lab analyses of the biological samples identified several species, dominated by Aspergillus flavus, a resilient organism capable of producing highly toxic chemical compounds. When the academic team breached the stone, the sudden movement of air likely aerosolized millions of these microscopic spores, sending them directly into the researchers' breathing zones. For anyone with a compromised immune system, inhaling this toxic dust could trigger severe, life-threatening respiratory disease. Yet, while the physical presence of the mold is a matter of scientific record, researchers never mapped an unbroken pathway of infection to every person on the team, leaving the true clinical scope of the hazard unresolved. Within days of stepping into the crypt, 4 researchers were dead. Within weeks, the toll reached 10. Eventually, 15 deaths were linked directly to the excavation. While Aspergillus flavus remains the strongest scientific explanation, medical examiners never established an unbroken causal pathway for every victim. Some died from heart attacks, others from strokes, and several from sudden, acute respiratory failure. This extreme temporal clustering, combined with incomplete exposure records, leaves the biological indictment incomplete. Science can isolate the mold, but it cannot prove it killed all 15. Across these 5 historical artifacts, we are left to weigh physical evidence against mathematical coincidence and toxic contamination against sheer mental suggestion. If history, physics, pathology, psychology, and biology can explain away the tragedies, one question remains. Which death can you explain away? Today, these artifacts remain quiet, locked behind glass or sealed in stone. Yet the mystery endures. The deepest hazard is not a supernatural curse, but our own relentless drive to exhume what was meant to stay forgotten. What do you think? Share your thoughts below.